everybody, and welcome back to Chats, Stats, and Fun Facts. It's another season preview, and this time we're talking about Toto Avilés. Saur, tell me, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I mention Toto?
Yellow cards and fouls at wrong moments during the game. That's what comes to mind. It's the reality. That's what it is, right?
It is the reality, and that is part of my fun fact. 2024, he finished tied for the most yellow cards in the MLS with James Sands, who is a midfielder that plays very physically. You would expect to get a lot of yellow cards. A center back, probably not someone you'd expect to be at the top of the list. He finished with 14 MLS, but 16 total. Part of his 37 appearances, 36 starts, 3,060 minutes, and 1 goal to go along with the 16 yellow cards. Was he good last year?
That's the biggest debate, I think, because when you think about 2024 as a season in its entirety, there's a lot of question marks about Inter Miami's defense. And for good measure, you and I have had this conversation that a lot of the times the defense came under scrutiny because we were conceding a lot of goals. But the biggest issue was not the midfield, was not the defense, it was the midfield. Toto Avilés was a big part of that defense. So there's this constant debate, at least in the Inter Miami fandom. And maybe to myself, I wonder, did he actually have a good season? Was he good last season or not? And the more I think about it, the more I do think he had a decent season. He had a good season. And if it weren't for the yellow cards and if it weren't for his indiscipline, we could have potentially said that that was a very successful season for a youngster who's growing into this game and who's developing really well. Every time I watched him a second time, I would think to myself, oh, Toto Avilés actually stood out a lot more than I saw him in that first watch, right? He does the simple things really well. He stays understated, doesn't, create too much of a ruckus unless he's conceding yellow cards. And overall, I think he's a good defender. He brings a lot to this team, especially in that back line. And going into 2025, I think he's going to be one of our starting center backs.
Yeah, listen, he is long, he's quick, he's athletic, he's good on one. He's our best one-on-one defender in terms of our center backs. And he was asked to do a lot with playing a high line, tracking back a lot, and covering for a midfield that oftentimes wasn't particularly good at helping their back line, especially when Yannick Bright wasn't in the midfield last year. So the tools are there. He was asked to do a ton, and he turned 20 in August. So he spent most of last season as a 19-year-old. That is incredibly young for a center back. He has now, after last season, about 70 professional games, which is still very young. Like, he is incredibly young, incredibly raw, and at a position that requires experience and intelligence and being in the right position to make plays. Those are all things that come with game time, with minutes, and he is still very raw and very low in terms of career minutes at center back. And so we have to keep that in mind. I agree with you. I thought he was good. I think when he played well, month over month, that sort of high end, him playing well, got better and better. And I think we're going to continue to see that heading into 2025, where he's 20 years old. This is his age 20 season. There are not many U21 center backs out there being consistent starters game in and game out. And you look at last year, 36 starts out of 37 games played. He was a starter basically every time he was available. He was never beat out by Christoph, never beat out by David Martinez, never beat out by Busquets or none of them. Nico Ferreira, none of them. He was, when you look at it, the number one center back last year. And so I expect him to be a huge part of this season. I understand Maxi Falcone is coming in. I understand David Martinez is there. I understand that there could be new names at center back, but this is a player that I think, given game time, is going to get better and better game after game, week after week, month after month. And I think we saw that last year. And if it continues into this season, I think, on a minute-to-minute basis, we'll be very happy with what we get from Toto Avilés.
There are certain things he does that are better than anybody else in our defensive back line. Potentially some of them can't even do that. He is a really good sweeper of the ball and area whenever there's an opportunity for the opposition to break on us. he is quicker than a lot of our defenders. And when I saw him live against New York FC in that Mickey Mouse Stadium, one thing that stood out to me was his positioning, the way he was commanding the back line, and the way he was cleaning up every time New York was able to get in behind our defense. He may have been beat by his man, but he got back in position and was able to sweep up. Whenever his right back got beat, he was coming out and actually taking on the defender. So he does that really, really well. You mentioned he's long, he's athletic enough, at least at this point in time in his center back career. And he has that ability to perform in a really good manner in important moments during the game. He has this level of maturity despite the lack of minutes that he has, that he's able to command that backline in difficult situations during the game. Now, the issue is he doesn't do that on a consistent basis. And you can't have consistency from a 20-year-old, from a 21-year-old. There are going to be dips in form. It is going to be up and down. And as we've seen, discipline is an issue with him. But what I do admire Toto Avilés for is his aggression and how he's able to continue to play his game despite the fact that he got so many yellow cards. Like, when he's going in for a tackle, there's no two minds about it. He is going to go in for that crunching tackle. And if he comes out of it worse off and if he gets that yellow card, then so be it. And I think when you ask for consistency, yes, he lacks that level of consistency, and that's a very fair argument to make. But you also have to realize, you mentioned 4 or 5 defending partners that he had throughout the entire season. He didn't have a consistent defensive partnership to work off of either. Whenever you talk about good defenders, good center backs in world football, you can always immediately think of their partner, a partner who continuously played with that center back partnership and developed this sort of a camaraderie in that back line, right? You had Puyol, and I think he played with Ramos.
Okay, let's keep this.
I don't want to go on the tangent here, but basically he needs that defensive partner to be able to get the best out of him on a consistent basis. And once he develops that partnership, whether it's with Noah Allen, whether it's with Maxi Falcone, I think we're going to get better. We're going to see a better side of Toto Avilés.
I think you just made an incredible point that has not been talked about enough with him. When you're a young developing center back, it's so helpful to have a veteran next to you that can consistently help you develop in the ways you need to develop. And he's actually been asked to be the rock in the back line, and it's been a rotating circle of other players around him. So as a young player, he's been counted on to be the leader, to be the consistency, and that is very difficult for a young player. And so it shouldn't be a surprise. Listen, we have to talk about the yellow cards because that was the standout feature, especially in the back half of the season. It felt like every single game he started, he would be suspended for a game for yellow card accumulation. Then the next game he would get a yellow card, and then the next game he would get a yellow card, and then he would be suspended again for yellow card accumulation. So he has to cut down on that for the simple fact that he can't be missing 5, 6, 7 games next year because he's suspended for yellow cards. He's young, and you just have to tell him to be better and have him watch the film and see how he can keep his emotions in check, be a little smarter, be a little later to commit to a challenge, whatever it is, because every yellow card is a little bit different. But he has to be get less yellow cards this year. I think that goes without saying. But
and I don't think it's about aggression either, right?
I agree.
You can be aggressive without actually being too overtly out there in terms of making fouls.
It's about being wise.
Exactly. And I was going to come to that exact point, because after a certain point, referees also tend to have this unconscious bias against you that, this guy's been getting a lot of yellow cards. If he goes in for a lunging tackle, that's probably going to, lead to another yellow card offense. So they're quick to get the yellow card out when they see you do it so many times. So at that point, it becomes about the IQ. You have to be smart enough about this. When should you go in for a tackle? When can you actually get away with a tackle? It's game management, and it's going to come with time, but he has to start learning it quick, because this team is really dependent on him to put in a good center-back performance and develop a partnership, because that was one of the areas that we struggled last season.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, he came here because he was at Racing and he wasn't going to get starter level minutes, but he was a very promising young prospect. So he came to Inter Miami, got to play with Messi, whatever. And he was going to get this opportunity to become a true number one center back at a pretty decent level in the MLS. And then he was going to use that to springboard to Europe, right? We heard Atletico Madrid was a club that was interested in him even back when Inter Miami wanted him, but he would have gone into the sort of youth setup there. And so he thought it was better to go get senior team minutes. And I agree with that decision. But no doubt he's going to still want to go to Europe at some point. So whether that's next January, whether that's a year and a half from now, whether that's in 6 months, that still has to be, you'd imagine, his goal for what he wants out of his career. Is he setting himself up to do that in 2025? This, to me, I mean, the yellow cards, the consistent improvement, but is he setting himself up to go to Europe in 2025? That, to me, is the biggest and most interesting question for Toto Avilés, because that's what he wants. And if Inter Miami can, sell him for a nice fee like they did Diego Gomez, like, you just keep the train moving, you go get the next one, and so on and so forth. So for Toto Avilés, I think he's going to get a lot of minutes, but can he take advantage of those minutes and show the types of things that European clubs are going to want to see before they invest 15, 20 million into a player like him and bring him in to be a starter for them? That's the big question for Toto Avilés in 2025.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned that's the goal for him. He wants to go to Europe eventually, wants to take that leap. We talk about players who have the potential to take that next step. I think he's one to watch out for. This is his third season here. He's grown comfortable with the team dynamics, and he could potentially take that next step and develop his game much further and give us what we haven't seen from him in the last 2 seasons. So I fully expect him to have a better season than last. My only worry with Toto Avilés is that a lot of his contributions to the game sometimes go under the radar. Now, I'm not a scout, so I'm hoping that a scout is actually looking out for those things. But if you think about it from his performance level, he can definitely do it. I don't doubt it. I think he has the ability to play in Europe. If his motivation is there, his talent is there, he just needs to combine in and get his head down and do the work this season. So I don't see why it can't happen. He has the, as I said, talent to do it, and he should definitely take that next step this season, because you also have to realize he's still young, especially for a center back who tend to reach their peaks slightly later in the careers. There's a lot of room for improvement and development. So when teams are scouting players like Avilés, they're going to keep the yellow cards in mind with his age and maturity as well. And they think, okay, this is something we can work on with, right? So he has the skill set and the tools to take that next step forward into Europe. And it's just a matter of him actually being able to develop his game a little bit further.
Okay, the last conversation I think we need to have with Toto is like, just, is he going to be a starter? Like on the biggest games consistently, is he going to be a starter? Maxi Falcone is coming in. David Martinez is around for the next 6 months. He might get extended. They might let him go and bring in another center back in the summer. Noah Allen is a guy that's been very good, although I don't think they're going to compete for one position. Sergio Busquets could potentially be a backline player. Ian Frey is a guy with a huge ceiling. Like, there are other names that you could see a world in which Inter Miami goes with someone else, and a conversation that we will have with plenty of players over the next month. There was a loyalty between Tata Martino and Toto Avilés, who, Tata Martino brought him in. That might not exist with Javier Mascherano. So is he going to be a starter?
Yes. Javier Mascherano knows him. He's familiar with Avilés' game. It's, I think, an unspoken rule that Avilés has been the starter in this team whenever he's available, at least in the centre-back role. And unless he proves otherwise, I don't see a reason why he won't be a starter. We have new signings coming in. I think he's going to partner Maxi Falcone. David Martinez is going to be a backup. And there are plenty of games to actually go and prove his worth. So I think to begin the season, the first preseason game was a bit of a glimpse into what Javier Mascherano's thinking. And for me, Toto Avilés is going to be the starter, at least to start the season. And as long as he continues to put in good performances, I don't see why he won't be the starter.
Yeah, I think he's going to get plenty of opportunities. You can see a world where Maxi Falcone and David Martinez, right-footer, left-footer, fit well together. But I do agree with you. I think it's going to be Falcone and Avilés in the biggest games. And I like what that could be. Okay, predictions for 2025. Over under 9.5 yellow cards. This is still a good amount for a starting center back, but it is realistic, not over the top. What do you think? Over under?
I'm going to go under. I wanna take a bit of gamble here. So I'm gonna say under 9.5 yellow cards. He's gonna actually pull up his socks this season. I think it's a talking point when it comes to Toto Avilés, and he's going to realize that and really put in a good disciplined performance every time he's on the pitch. So I'm gonna go under.
I'm going to go over. I need to see it before I believe it. And I think under would be more about how many games he plays than actual, a market improvement in his yellow cards. Any other predictions for 2025? Hot takes? Anything else you want to mention before we?
No, I think this is his breakthrough season. He has to do it, man. He is now considered the senior center back on this team, so he has to consistently put in a good performance, and I don't doubt that he's capable of doing that. He just has to show it.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We will see you in the next one. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.